points on these plans now for several meetings. And I think now is the time to really discuss whether or not the size and scope of this project is appropriate for that location. I don't think that people understand that the size of the building is as high as the peak of the cupola over the fire department base, that it really is a monstrous building for that very small location. And we have not discussed that, and this is what's bothering me very much. I have never felt that the entire complex was exactly handsome, and least of all the fire department end of it, and now we have replicated that at the other end in maybe multiplied a number of times. So I wonder if I could hear from the rest of the committee as to their feeling of the bulk of the complex. I would certainly agree, but I think, Alan, as architect, you said you would not recommend anything under 17,000 square feet, is that it? Or 15,000
We're at
square feet?
17,800
Right,
square feet.
right.
Plus the renovated piece, brings it to 18,000 plus.
And I would agree with you, most certainly on that size. If anything, I would rather see elbow than to see a problem that the police department suffers now, which I know firsthand. And but I really question the appropriateness of trying to squeeze it into that very small location. And so I'd like to know how the rest of the board feels about that.
That's certainly appropriate to open up for discussion. Anyone else have any comments? Perspectives?
The biggest comment I have is the elevator tower area. To me, if that wasn't there, or it was shoved in or something, or relocated, it would take away from that massive look to a big extent. Because it's only set back, what, 2 feet from the front? So you really see it as the front.
The only way you can see that, you only see that for about an eye blink because of where it is in relationship to the property to the side.
It's still basically.
There's a model right here if you want to see a scale model of it.
No, I know.
Right there. It's not a big element.
Joe did a good job.
And you can't move it into the building because you'll have no lobby left. It eats up the entire lobby to do a code required elevator.
Well, they can't-
Which it has to be.
It has to stay up towards the front?
That's so the public does not have access to the whole building, that's correct.
I think what my question is not, we've talked about the elevator in the past, but my question is whether or not we should really champion the cause of a building of this size opposite the town common, in among the historic structures, as historic district commission. I think that we really need to think about what we're doing to the center of town, and also to think very seriously about the other impacts that it appears are coming down the road rather quickly in the center of town. Some in the district and some just outside the district.
So let me ask you, go do a round robin. Marie, do you have opinions here?
I think it is quite large. It is, like Pat says, a large impact for that small space. And I'm trying to work with him. What our charter is in regards to that. I don't know how we can diminish the size of it, Pat.
No, we can't.
Space is
I
needed.
think my question is, does it belong there?
Well, I've thought of that too, Pat, as I stand and look over. And then you just spoke about keeping the McLean House within size and
Mhm.
appropriateness, and next to it is going to be this great looming
Absolutely.
building.
I think if you stand on top of the common, which I tried to do one evening, and look across, I felt as if I was eye level with the top of the cupola,
Well, it is.
which means you will be eye level with the roof of the police station. Scary.
I think I have to agree. What we've been trying to do over the last couple meetings, and I think there's a two-pronged approach that we need to take here, is one is if we're looking at a building proposal, to try and find a way to make the proposal as appropriate and as acceptable as possible. And I think you're right, Pat, that's what we've been spending a lot of the last several meetings doing. I think at some level, however, we also need to look at the site, the scope, the design, the massiveness, for lack of a better word, of what we're talking about here. Personally, I have two issues. I respect the need for light, and I don't want to belittle that if you're building a police station, you should do it correctly. But I have to be honest, when we initially talked about the different designs, and I was told that, because I was the one who actually suggested looking at the different windows and reducing them and all different things, I actually think that in the scheme of things, the windows off the roof area are much, much better. But there's still two different issues, as Pat alluded to earlier, is, to me, it makes it better. But I still think when we look at what we do to the site, and I'm glad someone brought a model because I hadn't seen it before, and with all due respect to the entirety of the system, it's huge. And I have to look at it and say, okay, so the building is that much larger, the footprint is that much larger, the height is that much larger. I can't see from here, I'm not sure if we've got some idea of what extra space gets taken up by parking. And when we look at it, we really start to have something that really is very, very large, and I think, as Pat's saying, is not necessarily the most appropriate. We still don't have any way in the future to grow this, if that ever becomes a need. And one thing I think this town has learned in a number of different arenas is that we don't always plan for as much growth as we need, not through any fault of anybody's, but because the world keeps changing. So I too have the same concerns. Tom, do you have anything to add to the process here?
Well, you're almost questioning Pat. You're always saying, build it somewhere else, aren't you?
For me?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Well, I think it does make sense. The activity is on Main Street, not in the historic district.
My only comment would be, if the mass on the street were downscale somewhat, and the other portion pushed back a ways, what that would do to the interior layout, I'm not sure, but that would be the only thing that would bother me in particular, is downscaling the mass that's out on the street, per se. Whether you follow in the similar lines as to the fire station bays, truck bays, but set further back or something in that fashion.
We probably could do that if we went up 5 stories, and then that would certainly defeat
Sure.
Well,
we can't.
in a way, you got
diminish the
another
size
whole
of the building.
story in the roof, you know. I understand somewhat what you're saying.
You know,
But it's just,
Do we know
it's open, huh?
how close the building, how close the proposed structure would be to the existing sidewalk?
Do we have any of that data?
You were given a site plan in the beginning. But to
Yeah,
answer
I'm
the
sorry not to
question,
bring it with me.
the base of the new proposed building is 8 feet forward of where the existing police station is. That's all it is. It comes up to the curving where that little planting bed is in the front. And I don't know how you're gonna downscale the building. I mean, we're doing what town meeting directed us to do.
well, we know that.
I'm not saying
Build on the site,
downscale.
okay? And,
I'm just saying
yeah,
re-
it's a building
reproportion.
which we've tried to address to reduce the scale. That's what we're working on, number one. The existing building is 42 feet forward of the fire station bay, so we're only 8 feet forward again, which scale-wise to the street is nothing, actually. And buildings of different masses and sizes have different scale. And we've tried to relate, the new addition as much as we can to what's there, so it'll blend in. And we spent a lot of time in our office around the common photographing all the buildings, the different window types, and we've tried to implement those nuances into this building so it does blend in. You gotta remember, you don't see the back of the building, you don't see this other side of the building, which we even took the time to scale that down on the site, because it is massive in the back. And so you're basically seeing what you'd see coming from Kitty's or Route 28, coming down this way, which is only 8 feet more than you saw before, and it's 1 story higher. That's all it is.
I want to be careful, yeah, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't dispute what you did and what the committee has done. Goodness knows, people in town need to appreciate what committees do, volunteers do, for hours on end. I've been doing it for 40 years, and I know maybe I should retire at this point. I get too upset. But the fact remains that, yes, town meeting did direct you to do that, and town meeting did appropriate money for it. Based on facts, or I shouldn't say facts, based on information that was not complete, that people did not understand that this was a total tear down and rebuild. I can't tell you how many people came to me and thought that this was just going to be a renovation and an addition onto the building. So the facts weren't there, the people didn't understand what they were voting on, and what town meeting directed this committee to do, and you, Mr. Leaf, was for a specific amount of money that they thought they were going to save over the costs of a freestanding building in another location. Well, it turns out, no, that's not the case. It turns out that it's pretty much equal. And I think that most people know that tear downs and rebuilds are not cost effective. So I have a real problem with people being asked to cough up enough money that it would have taken originally to build a freestanding building.
I also think we need to look at what, Mr. Lieb, you were, in essence, and I'll use the phrase, stuck with. You were stuck with let me finish, please, because this is not to critique you at all. I honestly think that given the site, given the requirements, given what you needed to put there, with, I believe, a hand tied behind your back, you may disagree, that's fine. I believe what you did is actually quite good. The question goes back to what Ms. Romeo said earlier, is as good as it can be, is it the right thing to do? And so the charge that you had is different than the charge that we have as we look at this going forward. That's not to tear apart your design. I also think it's important, since not all of our meetings have been taped, for it to be on the record that you have made every change that we've asked, graciously and helpfully, and I think that we've actually improved, at least in my mind, what it looks like. I'm a little disconcerted to see, frankly, the Police Station Building Committee vote for something that it had a pretty good idea that our board was moving away from, which is part of what we have to deal with right now, and that's fine. But I don't think that we necessarily need to look at this is something that must be built and must be built here. Because whenever one of these projects come forward, there are various boards involved for a reason that look at it from different perspectives. And as Ms. Romeo said earlier, it may be one thing when it's being built at a relatively strong cost savings. It may be another when it's built on par. And frankly, part of what we'll see is Monday night exactly where the town sits on that. I don't think any of us can sit here tonight and know. I'm sorry, you wanted to say something, Marie?
Alan, you've voted on the roof, which was a concern. I mean, I want to look at what we're trying to deal with. And,
Right.
As far as the brick, refresh my memory, because I think it came up at one of the meetings. Is there a suitable match to that also?
If we can exactly